The family's holiday dinner was already underway when I stepped into the room, my heart pounding like a war drum. Everyone was there, Mom, Dad, my sister Emily with her kids, and of course, her. My wife, Lisa. She sat near the head of the table, her face glowing with false laughter. Across from her, a man I'd come to despise more than I thought humanly possible, Alex. He sat there, his smug expression carved deep, leaning back like he owned the place. They both didn't see it coming. The flash drive in my pocket felt like a grenade. Hours earlier, I'd stumbled across the evidence, their messages, their videos, their damn plans. Lisa's lies finally unraveled like the cheap thread they were. I didn't sleep the night before. I didn't need to. I replayed the recording over and over, letting the anger fill me like gasoline. Now I was here, facing the fire. The festive chatter faltered as I strode in, ignoring the casual greetings. I went straight to the TV in the corner of the dining room. Silence descended as I plugged in the flash drive. "What's this?" Lisa asked, her voice sharp, an edge of nervousness betraying her. "You'll see," I replied coolly, not even glancing her way. The video began to play, and the air thickened with tension. It wasn't just any video, it was them. His hands on her, her fake giggles, the whispers, the betrayal. The room erupted into gasps and stunned silence. Lisa froze, her face pale as paper, her fork clattering onto the plate. Alex's smile melted faster than butter in a hot pan. "Lisa," my mother started, but I cut her off with a sharp gesture. Lisa tried to stand, but her legs gave out. She fainted, slumping sideways in her chair like a wilted flower. The room erupted into chaos. Chairs screeched as people stood, trying to help, but my focus locked on Alex. I lunged, grabbing his collar, dragging him up before anyone could react. "You bastard!" I roared, slamming his head into the table. The satisfying crack of his nose snapping was followed by blood spraying onto the tablecloth, mixing grotesquely with the cranberry sauce and mashed potatoes. "This is what happens when you mess with another man's wife," I shouted, my fist pounding into his stomach before driving my knee into his groin. He collapsed with a groan, hands cupping himself, his self-satisfaction now reduced to pitiful whimpers. "Daniel, stop," my father bellowed, but I didn't care. Years of trust, years of love, all betrayed in one instant. Let them see. Let them all see. I turned to Lisa, who had regained consciousness, her mascara-streaked face staring at me in horror. "You think I wouldn't find out?" I snarled. "How long, Lisa? How long have you been lying to me?" The room fell silent, the echoes of my words hanging heavy. Lisa's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Her perfect facade, the one she wore so effortlessly, had finally shattered. The truth was out in the open, and there was no charming her way out of this one. "Daniel, please," she stammered, clutching the edge of the table as if it could save her from drowning in the tidal wave of her own deceit. "Don't you dare say, please, to me," I barked, pacing in front of her like a caged animal. My knuckles were raw from slamming Alex's face into the table, but the pain only fueled my rage. "You've been lying to me, making me feel crazy for doubting you. All those late nights, all those business trips." "It's not what you think," Lisa started, but I cut her off with a laugh so cold it could freeze fire. "Not what I think?" I yelled, pointing to the screen where their indiscretions were still paused in damning clarity. "What else could this be? You're going to tell me this is Photoshop? That I'm imagining things again, like you've said so many times before?" Her face contorted with desperation. "Daniel, I was going to tell you. I was. I didn't know how." "You didn't know how." My voice was rising, a storm of anger I could no longer contain. "You knew how to meet him at cheap motels. You knew how to lie to my face every time I asked you what was going on. You knew how to betray me. Lisa stood abruptly, her chair clattering to the floor. You don't understand, she screamed, tears streaking her face. You were never home. You never cared about me anymore. That hit me like a slap across the face. The audacity, the sheer gall of her to turn this around on me. Oh, so it's my fault now? I asked, voice dripping with sarcasm. I worked long hours to give you the life you wanted. The house, the car, the vacations. And this is how you repay me? Alex groaned from the floor, still clutching his bloody nose, trying to sit up. I kicked a chair out of the way and stood over him. Don't even think about moving, I growled. He froze, his eyes wide with fear. Emily, my sister, finally stepped in. Daniel, this is madness, she said, her voice trembling. We're family. We can't handle this here. Oh, we're handling it right here, I shot back, my voice cracking. Everyone needs to see the truth. I won't be gaslit by her anymore. Lisa's face turned from pleading to icy rage. You want the truth, Daniel, she snapped. Fine. Yes, I cheated. I was lonely, and Alex was there for me in ways you weren't. He listened. He cared. Something you stopped doing a long time ago. The room went silent. My mother covered her mouth in shock, and my father muttered a curse under his breath. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. So that's your excuse? That I didn't listen enough? Didn't care enough? I took a step toward her, and she flinched. I gave you everything, Lisa. My time, my trust, my loyalty. But apparently, that wasn't enough for you. Tears filled her eyes, but her expression remained defiant. You're not perfect, Daniel. Stop acting like you are. Oh, I'm far from perfect, I admitted, my voice low and trembling with fury. But at least I never destroyed our marriage for a cheap fling with a two-bit coworker. Coworker, my father blurted out. Lisa, you've been bringing your lover around this family? Under our noses? Lisa's face reddened, but she stayed silent. Alex, finally managing to speak through his mangled nose, stammered, it wasn't supposed to happen like this. We didn't mean to hurt anyone. I laughed bitterly, my voice echoing off the walls. Didn't mean to hurt anyone? You two schemed behind my back for months, maybe years, and now you're telling me it wasn't intentional? My sister tried to intervene again. Daniel, let's just calm down. We can talk about this. No, I interrupted. I'm done talking. Talking hasn't gotten me anywhere with her. All she's ever done is lie. Lisa glared at me, her hands shaking. What do you want me to say, Daniel? That I'm sorry? Fine. I'm sorry. But don't act like you're some saint. You've ignored me for years. You've treated me like I'm just another piece of furniture in this house. And whose fault is that? I roared. You pushed me away every time I tried to connect with you. I see now it's because you already had him waiting for you. The room was suffocating, the air heavy with tension and anger. My father finally stood, his face stern. This is not the place for this. Take it outside or leave. But this is our family dinner, and I won't have it turn into a circus. I turned to him, my voice steady but firm. I'm sorry, Dad, but this circus started long before I walked into the room. I'm just the guy who finally decided to pull back the curtain. Lisa sank into her chair, burying her face in her hands. Alex looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. And me? I was ready for answers, or the end of it all. The dining room was now a battleground, the holiday cheer long gone. Bloodied napkins and shattered trust decorated the table where laughter once lived. My father's stern glare lingered on me, his disappointment heavy, but I couldn't care less. This wasn't about keeping up appearances anymore, it was about justice, raw and unfiltered. Lisa sat slumped in her chair, looking utterly defeated. Alex, the spineless coward, dabbed at his bloody nose with a napkin, his face pale and glistening with sweat. I wasn't done with either of them. I grabbed another chair, spun it around, and sat across from Lisa, leaning forward so my face was level with hers. "You're not walking out of this room without telling me the truth," I said, my voice sharp and steady. "How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape route. When none came, she finally answered, her voice barely above a whisper. 6 months. 6 months. I leaned back, the weight of her words settling on my chest like a boulder. "Half a year," I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. "Half a year of sneaking around, lying to my face, and pretending everything was fine." It wasn't fine. Lisa snapped, her voice breaking. "You were never home, Daniel. You were always working, always distracted." I felt invisible. I shook my head, laughing bitterly. "Invisible? That's your excuse?" "I was working my ass off to make sure you never had to lift a finger, Lisa. To give you the life you said you wanted. And while I was doing that, you were—" I trailed off, my words choked by the sheer disgust bubbling inside me. "Daniel, I made a mistake," she said, tears streaming down her face now. "A horrible, stupid mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen, I swear." "Oh, so this was an accident?" I shot back, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "What, you tripped and fell into his arms? Into his bed?" Her face twisted in anger. "You don't know what it's like to feel neglected. To feel like you don't matter anymore." I stood so abruptly that my chair toppled over. "Don't you dare twist this into something about me," I hissed. "You had choices, Lisa. You could have talked to me, gone to therapy, anything. But instead, you chose him." I jabbed a finger in Alex's direction. He flinched, holding up his hands defensively. "Look, man, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "Shut your mouth," I growled, cutting him off. "You don't get to apologize. Not here, not ever." The room was deathly quiet again, save for Lisa's muffled sobs. My sister Emily finally spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. "Daniel, this is a mess, but you can't solve it all tonight. Maybe you should both take a step back and cool down." "Cool down?" I echoed, turning to her. "Emily, this isn't something you just cool down from. My wife, your sister-in-law, has been screwing another man for 6 months. This isn't a little spat that can be fixed with an apology and a hug. Still," she pressed, "you're just going to make things worse if you keep going like this. Think about what you really want here." What I wanted? That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? Part of me wanted to pack up Lisa's things and throw them onto the lawn, locking the door behind her forever. Another part wanted to erase the last 24 hours from existence, to go back to the blissful ignorance I'd been living in. But neither of those options felt right. Lisa, as if sensing my hesitation, reached for my hand. I jerked away before she could touch me. "Don't," I said, my voice hoarse. "Don't act like we're suddenly okay. We're not. I want to fix this, Daniel," she pleaded, her tear-filled eyes searching mine. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll go to therapy. I'll quit my job if that's what you want. Just, please, don't give up on us." I stared at her, searching for any trace of the woman I'd married, the woman who once made me believe in love, in loyalty, in forever. But all I saw was a stranger, someone who had taken a wrecking ball to everything we'd built together. "I can't decide that right now," I said finally, my voice heavy with exhaustion. "Not after this." I gestured to the blood-stained table, the damning video still frozen on the TV screen. Lisa nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I understand," she whispered. I turned my attention to Alex, who was still sitting on the floor like the pathetic worm he was. "As for you," I said, stepping closer. He cowered, shielding his face. "You ever come near me or my family again, and you'll wish tonight was the worst thing that ever happened to you." "Understood," he stammered, his voice trembling. I didn't wait for a response. Grabbing my coat, I headed for the door. The room erupted into murmurs as my family tried to process what had just unfolded, but I didn't care. I needed air, space, anything to escape the suffocating reality of what my life had become. The cold December night bit at my skin as I stepped outside, but it was a relief compared to the heat of the dining room. I stood on the porch, staring into the darkness, my mind a swirling storm of rage, heartbreak, and confusion. The night wasn't over, but I had no idea where it would take me next. The cold air felt like needles on my skin, but I welcomed it. Anything to numb the storm inside me. I stood on the porch, gripping the wooden railing so tightly my knuckles turned white. My breath came out in ragged clouds, the only sound in the stillness of the night. Behind me, the house buzzed with chaos. I could hear muffled voices, Emily trying to calm Lisa, my father shouting something about calling the police, and Alex whimpering like the pathetic excuse for a man he was. I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over my best friend Mark's number. He was my go-to guy, the one person who had always been there for me, no matter what. But calling him now? Explaining this disaster over the phone? I couldn't do it. Instead, I shoved the phone back in my pocket and started walking. The quiet streets of my childhood neighborhood felt surreal, like I was moving through a dream I couldn't wake up from. Every Christmas light and festive decoration on the houses I passed felt like a cruel joke. Families laughing, celebrating, while mine was falling apart piece by piece. I stopped at the park at the end of the street and sat down on a bench. The memories hit me like a freight train. Lisa and I had come here on one of our first dates. It had been spring then, the cherry blossoms in full bloom. She'd laughed as I tried, and failed, to impress her by climbing a tree to pick a flower. That laugh. I'd fallen in love with it. But now? Now it felt like a weapon she'd used to lure me into her web of lies. I leaned back, staring up at the stars. What the hell am I supposed to do? I muttered to no one in particular. The crunch of footsteps behind me made me sit up straight. I turned, half expecting it to be Lisa or Emily coming to drag me back into the circus. Instead, it was my father. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, his voice gruff but not unkind. I nodded, and he lowered himself onto the bench beside me. For a while, we just sat there in silence, the chill in the air doing most of the talking. Finally, he spoke. "You know, your mother and I have had our fair share of fights over the years," he said, his tone measured. "Some pretty bad ones, too. But this is something else." I didn't respond, just stared at the frost-covered grass in front of me. "Lisa screwed up," he continued. "No doubt about that. And that Alex? I'd like to take a swing at him myself. But what matters now is what you're going to do about it." I let out a bitter laugh. "What can I do, Dad? She destroyed everything. How do you come back from that?" He sighed, his breath visible in the cold. "You can't undo what's been done. But you've got choices. You can try to rebuild, if you think there's anything worth saving. Or you can walk away and start over." "Start over," I muttered, the words tasting foreign on my tongue. "Do you have any idea how much we've built together? The house, the plans, the memories." "Memories don't mean much if they're built on lies," he said bluntly. I looked at him, surprised by his harsh tone. "I'm not saying it to be cruel," he added, softening. "But you've got to think about what's best for you, Daniel. Not her. Not anyone else. Just you." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and undeniable. "Do you think people can change?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He was quiet for a long moment before answering. "I think they can, but only if they truly want to. And even then, it doesn't mean you have to stick around waiting for them to prove it." I nodded slowly, the weight of his words sinking in. "You've always been a good man, Daniel," he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "Don't let this break you. You deserve better." With that, he stood and walked back toward the house, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I sat there for what felt like hours, replaying everything in my mind, the lies, the betrayal, the confrontation. Every time I thought about Lisa's face, her tears, her excuses, I felt a fresh wave of anger crash over me. But beneath the anger, there was something else. Something quieter, but just as powerful. Sadness. Grief for the life I thought we had. For the woman I thought she was. Eventually, the cold became too much to bear, and I made my way back to the house. When I stepped inside, the dining room had been cleaned up, the blood and chaos scrubbed away as if it had never happened. But the tension lingered, thick and suffocating. Lisa was sitting alone at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes red and swollen. "Daniel," she started, but I held up a hand to stop her. "I don't want to talk right now," I said, my voice flat. "I'm going to bed." She nodded, her shoulders slumping in defeat. I made my way upstairs to the guest room, shutting the door behind me. Lying there in the dark, I stared at the ceiling, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Could I forgive her? Did I even want to? And if I couldn't, what would life look like without her? I didn't have the answers yet. But one thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again. Morning light seeped through the guest room curtains, the muted glow doing little to soften the ache in my chest. I hadn't slept much, if at all. My thoughts had kept me awake, swirling in endless loops of betrayal and rage. I threw on some clothes and made my way downstairs, bracing myself for the aftermath. The house was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that felt unnatural. Lisa wasn't in the kitchen, the dining room, or the living room. Part of me felt relief not to see her, but another part felt the pang of absence, a cruel reminder of how deeply her betrayal had embedded itself in my life. Emily was sitting at the kitchen island with a cup of coffee. She looked up when I entered, her expression a mix of worry and pity. "Morning," she said softly. "Is it?" I replied, pouring myself a cup of black coffee. She didn't push, which I appreciated. Emily had always been the empathetic one in the family, but even her presence felt like too much this morning. "I made Lisa leave last night," she said after a pause. "Figured you needed space." I froze, the cup halfway to my lips. "You what?" "She didn't want to go," Emily explained quickly, "but I told her this was your house too, and if anyone needed to leave, it was her." I sat down, the tension in my shoulders easing just slightly. For the first time since this whole mess began, someone had made a decision that felt like it was in my corner. "Thanks," I muttered, genuinely meaning it. "She said she'd be at a hotel," Emily added. "And that she'd wait for you to decide when or if you want to talk." I nodded, not trusting myself to say more. After breakfast, I decided to leave the house. I couldn't sit in that place any longer, surrounded by memories that now felt tainted. I needed air, space, a chance to think without the walls pressing in on me. I drove aimlessly for a while, letting the hum of the engine and the rhythm of the road distract me. My mind, however, refused to stay quiet. Flashes of the previous night kept invading my thoughts, the damning recording, Lisa's pale face, Alex's broken nose, and the chaotic storm that followed. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my jaw clenched as the emotions threatened to overwhelm me again. Eventually, I ended up at a small diner on the outskirts of town. It was one of those places where the coffee was always strong, and the waitresses called everyone Han. I slid into a booth in the corner, grateful for the anonymity. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with a kind smile, poured me a cup of coffee without asking. "Rough night?" she asked, her tone sympathetic but not prying. "You could say that," I replied with a faint smile. As I sipped my coffee, I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen. There were texts from Lisa, short, desperate messages that I couldn't bring myself to open. "Daniel, please talk to me. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to fix this." I locked the screen and shoved the phone back into my pocket, the sight of her name making my stomach churn. The truth was, I didn't know if I wanted to fix anything. Lisa's betrayal had cut deeper than I thought possible, and the idea of trusting her again felt like trying to rebuild a house on a crumbling foundation. As I sat there, staring out the window, I started to reflect on the cracks that had been forming in our marriage long before Alex ever entered the picture. Lisa wasn't wrong about me being busy. I'd poured myself into my work over the past few years, determined to climb the ladder and give us the kind of life we'd always dreamed about. But in doing so, I'd neglected her, neglected us. Our conversations had become shallow, surface-level exchanges about schedules and bills. The intimacy, both physical and emotional, had faded into the background, replaced by the monotony of routine. But even so, nothing justified what she'd done. Nothing gave her the right to step outside of our marriage instead of trying to fix what was broken. I thought back to the early days of our relationship, back when we couldn't keep our hands off each other, couldn't go a day without talking about our hopes and dreams. When had that changed? When had we started drifting apart? The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Maybe this wasn't just her failure. Maybe it was ours. I stayed at the diner for hours, replaying everything in my mind. By the time I finally left, the sun was high in the sky, casting long shadows across the pavement. Instead of going home, I drove to Mark's place. He opened the door, his expression shifting to concern the moment he saw me. "Jesus, Dan. You look like hell," he said, stepping aside to let me in. "Thanks," I muttered, collapsing onto his couch. Mark didn't push for details, which was exactly why I'd come to him. He handed me a beer, sat down across from me, and waited. After a long silence, I finally told him everything: Lisa, Alex, the video, the confrontation. By the time I finished, my voice was hoarse, and my hands were trembling. Mark leaned back, his expression grim. "Man, that's brutal. I don't even know what to say." "I don't know what to do," I admitted, my voice breaking. Part of me wants to forgive her, try to fix things. But the other part? I don't think I can look at her without seeing him. Mark nodded slowly. "You don't have to decide right now. Take some time, figure out what you really want. Just don't rush into anything you'll regret later." I nodded, his words sinking in. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a sliver of clarity. That night, as I lay on Mark's couch, staring at the ceiling, I made a promise to myself. Whatever decision I made, whether to fight for my marriage or let it go, it would be on my terms. No more lies, no more pretending. It was time to take back control of my life. The next morning, I woke up on Mark's couch with a crick in my neck and the faint memory of his encouragement echoing in my head. His advice stuck: I needed time and space to figure things out. The road ahead wasn't clear, but for the first time since everything had exploded, I felt like I was standing on slightly steadier ground. I sat up, running a hand through my hair, and glanced at my phone. More messages from Lisa. "Please, Daniel. We need to talk. I'll tell you everything. No more lies. You can hate me, but I can't lose you." The bitterness in my gut roared back, and I nearly hurled the phone across the room. I didn't want her apologies. I didn't want her explanations. But a part of me, damn it, a small but persistent part, felt the pull of curiosity. I needed answers, if only to make sense of how we'd ended up here. So, against my better judgment, I texted her back. Meet me at the park at noon. You've got one chance to explain yourself. The park was cold and empty when I arrived. The wind cut through my jacket as I sat on the same bench my father and I had shared the night before. Memories of Lisa and me here years ago were still fresh in my mind, taunting me with their innocence. She showed up 10 minutes later, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. She wore the scarf I'd bought her last Christmas, and for a brief, fleeting second, I hated how much I still notice things like that. "Hi," she said softly, stopping a few feet away from me. I didn't respond, just gestured for her to sit. She hesitated, then sat down, keeping a cautious distance between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was thick, heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, I broke it. "Why?" I asked, my voice colder than I'd intended. Lisa flinched, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "I don't know where to start," she said, her voice barely audible. "Try the truth," I snapped. Her eyes welled up with tears, but I refused to feel sorry for her. This was her mess, and I wasn't about to make it easier for her. I felt alone, Daniel," she said finally. "You were always working, always distracted. It was like I didn't exist anymore." "That's your excuse?" I said, my voice rising. "I worked hard for us, Lisa. For our future. And your response was to, what? Jump into bed with the first guy who paid you attention?" "It wasn't like that," she cried, her voice breaking. "It started as just talking. He listened to me, made me feel seen." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, how noble. And when did talking turn into sleeping with him?" Her face crumpled, and she looked away. "It was a mistake," she whispered. "A terrible, stupid mistake." "A mistake?" I repeated, incredulous. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, Lisa. This was a choice. A series of choices, over and over again. Don't you dare insult my intelligence by calling it a mistake." She broke down, sobbing into her hands. But her tears did little to soften my anger. "You don't get to cry," I said harshly. "You don't get to play the victim here." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "You're right," she said shakily. "I have no excuse. I was selfish, and I hurt you in the worst way possible. But, Daniel, I love you. I've always loved you." I scoffed. "Funny way of showing it." "I'll do anything to fix this," she pleaded. "Therapy, counseling, whatever you want. Just, please, don't give up on us." Her words hung in the air, desperate and raw. And for the first time, I felt something other than anger, confusion. Part of me wanted to believe her, to cling to the hope that we could somehow rebuild what she'd shattered. But the other part, the louder, angrier part, couldn't forgive her. "Why him?" I asked after a long silence. "Of all people, why Alex?" She hesitated, then looked down at her hands. "He was convenient. He was around." "It doesn't mean anything, Daniel. He doesn't mean anything." "Convenient," I repeated, the word tasting sour in my mouth. "You threw away our marriage for convenient." "I know," she whispered, her voice thick with shame. I stood up abruptly, unable to sit there any longer. The sight of her, the sound of her voice, it was too much. "I need time," I said, my voice tight. "Don't call me, don't text me. Just, give me time." "Okay," she said quickly, standing as well. "I'll wait, as long as it takes. I swear, Daniel, I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." I didn't respond. Instead, I turned and walked away, each step feeling heavier than the last. That night, back at Mark's place, I replayed the conversation in my mind, over and over. Her words, her tears, her desperate pleas, they were like a poison I couldn't purge. Could I ever forgive her? Could I even begin to trust her again? And if I couldn't, what did that mean for the life we'd built together? The questions were endless, and the answers felt impossibly far away. But one thing was certain, the road ahead wouldn't be easy. For now, all I could do was put one foot in front of the other and hope that, somehow, I'd find my way. I spent the next several days in a strange limbo, a mix of anger, sadness, and something I hated admitting, regret. Lisa stayed out of the house as I'd asked, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Mark tried his best to distract me, but the reality of what had happened clung to me like a shadow. I couldn't escape it, no matter how hard I tried. The recording on the flash drive remained in my possession, and I couldn't bring myself to destroy it. It felt like both a weapon and a wound, a reminder of what I'd seen, what I knew, and the depths to which Lisa and Alex had sunk. Late one night, curiosity, or maybe masochism, got the better of me. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop, my heart racing as I opened the file. What played out on the screen was a brutal confirmation of everything I already knew. Lisa's laugh, so familiar and once comforting, sounded hollow and tainted as she spoke to Alex in the recording. They joked, they flirted, they crossed every boundary that had once protected our marriage. It wasn't just the physical betrayal that gutted me, it was the emotional connection they'd shared, the intimacy that had once been mine. I slammed the laptop shut, my breathing heavy, my hands shaking. My chest ached as if I'd been hit by a truck, and I couldn't stop the tears that followed. This wasn't something I could forgive. Not now. Maybe not ever. The next morning, I decided to take control of my life. No more wallowing, no more replaying the betrayal in my mind. It was time to act. I called my lawyer, David, an old friend who'd helped me with some minor legal matters in the past. He didn't ask many questions when I told him what had happened, he simply listened, his tone professional yet sympathetic. "Daniel, you've got options," he said after I explained everything. "If you want to file for divorce, we can get the ball rolling immediately. But if there's even a small part of you that wants to try to save this marriage, I'd recommend couples counseling first. Either way, it's your call." I hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Filing for divorce felt final, like cutting away a part of my life and walking away from it forever. But trying to save the marriage? That felt impossible after what I'd seen, what I knew. "I need time to think," I said finally. "Take your time," David replied. "But don't wait too long. The longer you let this sit, the harder it'll be to move forward, no matter what you decide." That afternoon, Emily stopped by unannounced. She brought lunch, a peace offering, I suspected, and sat with me in the kitchen while I picked at a sandwich I didn't have the appetite for. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her voice gentle. I shrugged. "Depends on the hour. Sometimes I feel like I'm okay, like I can handle this. Other times," I trailed off, shaking my head. Emily nodded, her expression understanding. "I can't imagine what you're going through. But you're stronger than you think, Daniel." "Am I?" I asked, my voice bitter. "Because right now, I feel like I'm barely holding it together." "You're allowed to feel that way," she said. "But don't let it break you. You deserve better than this." Her words struck a chord, and for the first time in days, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time, determination. That evening, I returned home. The house was as quiet as ever, but this time, it didn't feel suffocating. It felt like mine again. I went upstairs to the bedroom, pausing at the doorway. The bed we'd shared now felt like a monument to her betrayal, and I couldn't bring myself to sleep there. Instead, I grabbed a few things and headed back downstairs to the guest room. As I settled in, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Another message from Lisa. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I'm not giving up on us. Please, just tell me what you need. I stared at the message for a long time before typing a response. I need time. She replied almost immediately. I'll wait. As long as it takes. I didn't respond. The next day, I met with David in person. He laid out the legal process for divorce, explaining everything in detail. The paperwork, the division of assets, the possibility of alimony, it all felt overwhelming. Do you think she'll contest it? David asked. I shook my head. No. She's too focused on trying to win me back. If I decide to file, I think she'll sign without a fight. Good, David said. That'll make things easier. Easier, I repeated, the word feeling hollow. There was nothing easy about this. On the drive home, I thought about the life Lisa and I had built together. The good times, the bad, the moments that had defined us as a couple. Was I ready to throw it all away? The answer wasn't clear, and that scared me. When I got home, I found myself sitting in the guest room, staring at the divorce papers David had given me. All I had to do was sign them, and the process would begin. But I couldn't do it. Not yet. For now, the papers would stay in the drawer, out of sight but not forgotten. That night, as I lay awake in the guest room, I made a decision. The road ahead would be mine to choose. No one, not Lisa, not Alex, not even David, could dictate how I moved forward. Whether I chose to fight for my marriage or walk away from it, the choice would be mine and mine alone. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a sliver of control. And for now, that was enough. 2 weeks had passed since I'd last seen Lisa. The house felt like a museum of our life together, each room a gallery of memories, both cherished and cursed. The divorce papers remained unsigned in the drawer, a silent reminder of the decision I hadn't yet made. The days were quieter now. I avoided mutual friends, skipped family calls, and buried myself in work. Yet, deep down, I knew I was circling the same question: do I give Lisa another chance, or do I end it all? The answer came sooner, and more violently, than I ever expected. It was a Friday evening when the knock at the door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment, I considered ignoring it. But the persistent pounding wouldn't stop. When I opened the door, I found Alex standing there, his face bruised and his nose still swollen from our confrontation at the family dinner. "You've got some nerve coming here," I growled, gripping the edge of the door. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice strained. "It's about Lisa." "Get off my porch before I finish what I started," I snapped, already halfway to slamming the door in his face. "She's lying to you," he blurted, his voice trembling. "She's been lying to both of us." The words froze me. I opened the door a fraction wider, glaring at him. "What the hell are you talking about?" Alex glanced over his shoulder nervously, as if expecting someone to appear. "She played me, Daniel. She made me think she was leaving you, that we had a future. But now I see she was just using me." "Good for you," I said coldly. "You're only just figuring out that my wife's a liar? Congratulations. Now get lost." He shook his head. "You don't understand. Lisa's not just cheating on you with me. There's someone else." The air seemed to leave the room. "What?" "I found out last week," Alex said, his voice rising with desperation. "She's been seeing another guy. Someone she met at her gym. She's been playing us both." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. My grip on the door tightened as the room spun. "You're lying," I said through gritted teeth, though I could already feel the cracks forming in my resolve. "Why would I lie?" Alex said, throwing his hands up. "She's been feeding me the same sob story she probably told you, that she's lonely, that you don't understand her. And all the while, she's out with some other guy. I stepped back, my mind racing. Was it possible? Could Lisa be so brazen, so reckless, to betray me not once, but twice? Get out, I said, my voice trembling. I'm telling you the truth, Alex insisted. Check her gym records. Ask her where she's been. You'll see. I slammed the door in his face and leaned against it, my heart pounding in my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. Alex's words haunted me, and despite my hatred for the man, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that he might be telling the truth. The next morning, I drove to Lisa's gym. My stomach churned as I parked across the street, my eyes fixed on the entrance. I hadn't told Lisa I was coming, I needed to see this for myself. An hour later, I saw her. Lisa walked out of the gym, her face flushed, her hair damp with sweat. But she wasn't alone. A man followed close behind her, tall and muscular, with an air of confidence that made my blood boil. They laughed as they walked to his car, her hand brushing his arm in a way that felt too familiar. My chest tightened as I gripped the steering wheel, fighting the urge to charge out of the car and confront them both. But I didn't. I waited, watching as they drove off together. That evening, I confronted Lisa. When she walked through the door, I was sitting at the kitchen table, the divorce papers spread out in front of me. Daniel, she said, her voice wary. What's this? Sit down, I said, my voice cold. She hesitated, then sat across from me, her eyes flicking to the papers. What's going on? I know about the guy from the gym, I said bluntly. Her face went pale, and for a moment, she looked genuinely shocked. But then her expression hardened. What are you talking about? Don't lie to me, Lisa, I said, slamming my hand on the table. I saw you with him. I know everything. Her facade crumbled, and she let out a bitter laugh. Fine, she snapped. Yes, I've been seeing him. And you know what? I don't regret it. Because at least he makes me feel alive. The words cut deeper than any blade. Alive? I repeated, my voice trembling. Is that what this is about? Your cheap thrills, your selfishness. You've destroyed everything we built for your own amusement. Lisa stood, her expression defiant. You don't get it, Daniel. You never have. You've been so busy being the perfect husband that you forgot what it means to actually live. I rose to my feet, my hands shaking with anger. Get out, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Take your lies, your betrayal, and get the hell out of my house. Her eyes widened, but she didn't argue. She grabbed her keys and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. As I sat alone in the empty house, a strange sense of calm washed over me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt free. Free from the lies, the manipulation, and the weight of a marriage that had long since stopped being a partnership. I picked up the divorce papers, signed my name with a steady hand, and placed them in an envelope. It wasn't the ending I'd envisioned, but it was the one I needed. Lisa's betrayal had shattered me, but it had also given me something invaluable, clarity. From this moment on, my life was my own. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to move forward.